body or between conscious and subconscious, but it's helpful to understand these different aspects of ourselves. Your conscious mind does not operate independently of your subconscious or of your physical body, and neither does your subconscious mind. But understanding these different aspects can help us to be clear about how to direct ourselves so that we experience life. The whole goal, I think, is to experience life in a fulfilling way. You know, awareness is a huge element of spiritual awakening and enlightenment. What am I aware of has a lot to do with how I perceive the world, with how I process information and input and through my senses and through my intuitive knowing. Little exercise we did, for those of you that were here for the meditation just now, was really about making a conscious choice to access some of our greater depth of being that we may not do on a regular basis. You know, so you may have noticed for some of you that there were aspects of that felt a little uncomfortable. There might have been a little inner resistance. It's a process that was a little piece of a process we do sometimes called visioning, which is about asking the question, what wants to happen here? Not what do I want to happen here, I being that primarily conscious version of me, but what does the entirety of me, the depth of my being, the place from which my intuitive knowing arise, what does that want? And am I in a place to hear it? Am I in a place to accept it and understand it? Because most of us are conditioned in our larger culture not to be in that place. We're conditioned to kind of turn off that inner knowing. How does that happen? Well, as a kid, you know, you might have been a dreamer, a daydreamer or a dreamer, and your parents would say, pay attention. What are you doing? You know, I'd be sitting on the couch zoned out, you know, kind of. What happens when you're staring off into space, right? You're inside. You're being a mystic. And for the most part, my parents and my grandparents didn't like mystics. Apparently, because every time I was being mystical, they'd say, get up and do something practical. You know, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. What are you doing? And that was just that's a cultural habitation that many of us were raised in. If you weren't raised that way, good for you. You probably paid for that in high school when the other kids who were raised that way descended upon you, right? So that's just one element. You know, spiritual reawakening, in a sense, is what our teaching is really about. Reawakening, remembering stuff that we've been conditioned to forget, is often about remembering aspects of ourselves that we have simply been conditioned to kind of set aside and not listen to, not pay attention to. So this conscious-subconscious divide is really an idea. The conscious mind, which is everything I'm aware of and you're aware of, and your conscious mind blends into the subconscious mind. There's not a hard dividing line, but it does become a point where you're not aware, and that's subconscious, beneath conscious. Another term for it is unconscious. Hans Selye, one of the leading founders, if you will, of Western psychology, said the reason they call the unconscious is because it's unconscious. Which means I don't know what's in there. You don't know what's in there. And the subconscious mind, fortunately or unfortunately, is where all the action is. It's where our belief system is. It's where our worldview is stored. And it's where our interpretations of life come to be in such a way that they govern how we perceive and interact with the world around us. So it is kind of like an iceberg where most of it's below the surface. And we don't have direct access to that which is beneath the surface. I don't know what my beliefs are other than to see what happens in my life. And even then I may be interpreting what's happening in my life from a conscious set of beliefs that's different from my subconscious set of beliefs. That's called being in denial. See? When you're in denial, you don't know you're in denial. Some people, I'm just in denial about that. No, you're not. You're willfully ignoring something. But when you're really in denial, you don't know you're in denial. We've talked about this before. Remember we talk about, anybody know what it feels like to be wrong? Anyone ever been wrong in here about anything? No. Well, somebody will say, what's it feel like? Well, it feels awful. It feels terrible. You feel embarrassed, whatever. No, that's what it feels like when you find out you're wrong. before you find out you're wrong, being wrong feels exactly like being right. Right? Doesn't it? You know? Sure it does. So you can't tell the difference at the subconscious level between being wrong and being right. Your subconscious takes everything literally. So let's look at some of these rules, because they do affect in a tremendous way how we see the world. The first one is, despite its power, and by the way, the subconscious mind is infinitely powerful. Your conscious mind, you can only really focus on one thing at a time. You can go back and forth between a couple of things, but you're only in any given nanosecond, your conscious mind is doing one thing. Okay, some of you are in the Bahamas right now in your conscious mind, I can tell. Despite its power, the subconscious is a servant of the conscious mind. So in other words, as we think over time, as our thought patterns exist, they tend to generate beliefs on the subconscious level. The subconscious doesn't make up stuff on its own. It has to accept input from the conscious mind, and it doesn't know the difference between stuff you're making up and stuff that's really happening. Doesn't have that, because all of the information that comes into the subconscious mind comes in as thought. So in other words, I see something like, I can look at Andy right now, and I'm seeing Andy perceptually through my visual cortex, which by the way doesn't really connect to the visual part of your brain. It stops a 1/4 inch short because we're making up most of it with other parts of our brain that the visual cortex does. So what I'm seeing of Andy, take a look at Andy. Isn't he magnificent? Yeah. Okay. And he is. But you and I, as we look at Andy, we're actually physically perceiving through our optic nerve about 15% of what we're seeing. The other 85% or so we're adding in based on our experience, based on other things, like me telling you, isn't he magnificent? You look over, oh yes he is, or you say, oh no he isn't, but depending on your own experience of that. But we're not seeing Andy in the moment. Mostly what we're doing is filling in what we think is there. We do the same thing with hearing, we do the same thing with touch. So there's a lot of filling in. And as I look at Andy and I think about Andy, that's what gets recorded in my subconscious mind. Andy directly doesn't go into my subconscious mind. What my impression, my idea, my beliefs, and not beliefs but thoughts about Andy are what go in. So I could be looking at Andy and have that happen, or I could just be like this and thinking about Andy. I can see Andy in my mind's eye now, and I'm not seeing him in my physical eye. And I can be thinking about, I could give him big elephant ears, maybe a trunk, I could give him a giraffe's neck, and I could think about Andy like that for a while. And my subconscious mind is going, yeah, that's Andy too. And over time, what will happen is, with all the different images and ideas of Andy, it will kind of take the aggregate, and that will become my belief system about Andy. See? Have you ever misunderstood anything? Anyone? You thought you knew something was so, or you thought someone said something and it turned out they said something different, or you thought you saw somebody that you knew and it turned out it wasn't them. See? We do that all the time. Because our perception is not just operating independently, our perception is driven by our subconscious beliefs to a large extent. So when I look at Andy, I'm not just taking the input coming in, I'm also projecting a lot of that I've already got about Andy, because we have some history. And I'm like, okay, that's Andy. Now if I look over one day and Andy's not there and someone else is there, I might double back, because where's Andy? Because I had an expectation that he would be there. Or I might see somebody on the street that really looks like Andy. Oh, there's Andy. I go up and tap him on the shoulder and turns around and it's, someone named Sharon. From the back sometimes, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. You ever done that, mistake someone, or, it's sort of like the feeling you get when you walk in the wrong restroom. Where's that feeling come from? See, that's an attitude. Attitudes are stored in our subconscious mind based on beliefs that we have. Why do you get upset when you're in the wrong restroom? If you do. Because you've been conditioned to believe you don't belong there, right? And maybe people are screaming. But see, that process of walking into the wrong restroom because we misunderstood the sign, and then being confronted with the reality of being in the wrong restroom and the reaction we have to it, that is automatic. We don't make it up on the spot. It's automatic. It's all generated within the subconscious based on input that it's gotten over time through our conscious mind. Okay? The subconscious mind responds with instinct and habit. Instinct primarily at the brainstem level, that reptilian brain, which is sitting on the top of your spine, which is like an on-off switch. Okay, reptiles only have, that's the only brain they've got. So if a lizard's sitting on a rock and the temperature gets above a certain degree, the lizard will just get off the rock. The lizard doesn't sit there and think, gee, it's getting really warm, I'll just stay 15 more minutes because I want to get this side really tan. No, it doesn't do that, right? It doesn't have the capacity to think about it or feel emotionally. It's just like a toggle switch. Too hot, I'm off the rock. Okay, I'm on the rock. And we have that within us too, and we react that way to certain things, don't we? Like when the rat came into the yard and Dorian saw it. It wasn't a very intellectual process of deciding how to react. It was, rat! So, instinctual level, and by the way, the reptilian brain operates primarily on fear. And when the reptilian brain is triggered, it takes over. Okay, think about when you've really been afraid. You know, maybe a spider in the bathtub or brake lights in front of you going 70 miles an hour, you know, and you've been texting. And you go, you know, all the release of all the chemicals in your system, and it just takes over. You can't rationalize in that instant. And then habit is at a higher level in the limbic system primarily, which is where the emotional center of the operation is. And we develop habits that we don't have to pay attention to consciously. Like, which shoe do you put on first in the morning? Check tomorrow. Because you may not even know. You know, because it's a habit. And we have lots and lots and lots of habits that get us through our day without having to put our conscious attention on a lot of different things. Some of the habits we get in are really good, and some of them aren't so good. But the subconscious mind is primarily instinct and habit or conditioning. It doesn't get creative. It can only do what it's programmed to do. You can't get creative in a crisis. You can only do what's already in there. Okay? I love this quote. Our subconscious minds have no sense of humor, play no jokes, and cannot tell the difference between reality and an imagined thought or image. What we continually think about eventually will manifest in our lives. Takes you seriously. You know, you think, oh, God, my life sucks. Geez, look at and what happens when you get that belief? You look for evidence everywhere. You use your senses, manipulate your senses to give you evidence that confirms what you already believe to be true. Which drives us to intentionally seek information from sources that will confirm our beliefs. Watch the news lately? You know? Well, the people on that channel are crazy. The people on this channel know the truth. I don't even have to tell you what channel that is. You know, right? Because we seek out that which will confirm our worldview on a regular basis. If our worldview is self-destructive, we'll seek out people who will make us feel bad. Unconsciously, we do this. We may even, you know, if you're really good and you're really powerful, you can turn really nice people into awful people that will treat you poorly if you don't have any awful people around. We manipulate and teach other people how to treat us. Very subtly. We're not aware of it consciously. We're in denial about it. In fact, most people that do that will say, I'm just trying to be loved. I just want to be nice to people. I just want to have friends. And then subconsciously they send people signals that are just irritating as hell. I remember in Fort Lauderdale, we used to have a fairly big lobby, and we had 6 greeters, 3 on each side, double doors, people coming in, a lot of folks coming in. There were like 500-600 people at a service, a lot of people coming in. And you had to really go out of your way not to get a hug. It wasn't easy. We told them, if somebody clearly doesn't want to be hugged, don't hug. But it was like pretty rare that you wouldn't get offered a hug. And I would get occasionally a message where I came to your center 2 weeks ago and no one spoke to me, no one was friendly, no one offered to show me around or anything like that. And I would think, man, you're good. You must have come in like a ninja and crawled across the ceiling. Dropped into the back row, Because it was a very social place. It was a very friendly place. But see, if I'm coming in giving off the vibe, stay away from me, people will stay away from you. And then that's your subconscious desire. If your conscious desire is different, you don't question your own motives. You say there must be something wrong with these people. So that's kind of how it works. The third rule is you use repetition, authority, and emotion to program the subconscious. Repetition, authority, and emotion. We talk about affirmative thoughts, affirmative statements. That is words, images, and emotion. The emotion is critical. Your emotional self is intertwined with your entire being. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's all one thing. So if I want to give myself a new direction away from what I've already patterned myself to do in a habitual way, I've got to be really clear and pretty strong in my intention and the emotion that I put with it, because otherwise the dominant existing belief will continue to be dominant. So we do our spiritual practice, we have to be really clear and really strong within ourselves. Using emotion very effectively. A lot of people say, well, your teaching doesn't have any emotion in it. Well, we don't tend to speak in tongues and roll on the floor. We could do that. We think in tongues. No, just kidding. We don't do that, okay? Just hear that on the cameras? We don't do that. No, but we are very clear, and the idea is there has to be a strong intention. Intention implies emotion. Intention implies that I'm already moving in a certain direction. In fact, you want your prayer treatments, your affirmations to be not only words and images, you also want to maybe have some movement in there, some visceral connection. It's more powerful to write an affirmation than to say one. Because when you're writing, you're actually having a different channel into your subconscious mind. So a good thing to do in the morning is get up and write the 3 or 4 major affirmations that you want to focus on that day. But we also, if I just say, I am a happy person, I am a happy person, I am a happy person, like I used to do Hail Marys in school. Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord is with you. Hail Mary, full of grace. I had to do about 70 every time I went to confession. And I actually could do a Hail Mary in 7 seconds. We used to have contests outside the church in the parking lot. Our Father about 11, which meant there was no feeling, no meaning, no intention in any of those prayers. I was just trying to get through them. And sometimes that's a problem. We may be saying affirmative statements, but we're not following through with that intention and the feeling and the emotion to really see it as though it is actually so. It's not seeing it as though it's possible. It's seeing as though it's actually so, actually done, to the point where after I'm done the affirmation, where is it? I should have talked myself into it. Because that's how we convince our subconscious mind to believe something, with the power of the emotion and intention behind it. It has to be a committed statement. See, if you don't believe the affirmation when you're saying it, it's not going to translate into the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is going to receive it as, she doesn't believe this. Continue doing what you've been doing. So repetition, authority, and emotion. The subconscious mind does not process negatives. Best example of this in the history of the world. Some of us saw on live TV. President Nixon. Many of you are not old enough to remember President Nixon, but he stood there and he said, "I am not a crook." Now, when you say a negative, the image is what you're of the negative. You ever think about it? Okay, nobody think about a rhinoceros. See? So when I say, I'm not an idiot, what image do I get? I get an image of me being an idiot. That's what gets stored. You know? I'd say what President Clinton said, but it's Sunday. I remember one time when my girls were little, Heather was about 2, and we went to Disney World, as we did regularly living in Florida. And she got a set of the 7 Dwarfs, little rubber dolls that had heads that would turn. Well, she loved Dopey the best. And she broke Dopey's head off. And it's rubber. You know, so I got some glue and I put it back on, and it was like kind of fragile, and I hand it to her, and she takes it by the feet and the head, and I go, "Careful, honey, don't twist it." And my ex-wife said, "She just did what you told her to do, stupid." Past wife experience. And she did. I said, "Don't twist it." She got twist in her head, and that's what she did. By the way, do you know 6 out of 7 dwarfs are not happy? I've been saving that one. So the subconscious mind doesn't process a negative. When you say, "I'm not the image you get is what you don't want. So that's why affirmations have to be positive. Your treatments have to be positive statements. I am not I am not Okay, make sense? Let's move on. The subconscious represses memories with unresolved negative emotions. So when something doesn't feel good, it tries to repress it, get it out of your experience, out of your conscious awareness. That's called repression. We tend to repress things that we don't like about ourselves, or that the world communicates to us are not desirable or good about us. And that's the shadow. And when those things are repressed, they don't become inactive. In fact, they become more active, but they become invisible to you. And we begin to project them out onto others. So it's important to become aware of when we're doing that. And the only way to tell when you're doing that is other people are upsetting you. Has anyone ever been upset by anyone else? Anyone? Okay, one guy up here. Yeah. Right. But what we have to learn, and many of you have been through, I've done shadow classes here and so forth, what we have to learn is when I get angry at someone else, it's usually because they're simply mirroring back a quality that I'm projecting onto them. Doesn't mean they're not a jerk. Doesn't mean that at all. Doesn't mean what they're doing is okay. What it means, but my emotional reaction is about me, not about them. So we tend to repress these things. As long as they stay repressed, they stay active, and quite often they limit our capacity to embrace the good because we've got this repressed negative quality that we're still clinging to. It is part of our believed reality in the subconscious mind. So that's why we've got to bring some of that stuff to the conscious level, become aware of it so we can deal with it kind of reorganize it and put it on a shelf in a prominent place rather than down in the basement. So that's another element. The subconscious mind works with symbols and metaphors. Okay, anyone ever had a dream? Anyone ever had a dream? Okay. Yeah, dreams. What happens in dreams? You know, crazy stuff, right? But you'll notice there's a lot of symbols, a lot of metaphors, a lot of archetypal kinds of images that tend to come up in human dreams that in our culture we don't pay a lot of attention to. Now, this began, this kind of moving away from symbolic thinking to more literal thinking when people became literate around the time of the printing press, you know, and the century or so after that when reading became very common. Before Gutenberg, you know, you might have a couple of people, maybe 5 to 10% of any population could read and write. Everybody else was illiterate. But when you're illiterate, you think symbolically because that's how you remember things. You know, so you don't remember the whole story, you remember the symbolic meaning of the story. That's why, you know, parables that are in the Bible that Jesus would teach from. A parable is a really easy to remember story because it has to be easy to remember because you can't give them a handout. Right? But it has meaning that's beneath that is symbolic or metaphorical. We don't tend to teach or operate that way anymore. We tend to be more literal-minded, and therefore we're not as aware of the meaning of these symbols that exist in our subconscious mind, that come up in dreams, that come up in daydreaming, that come up in other aspects. We don't understand the myths to a degree that people used to. So we have trouble with understanding the meaning of symbols and metaphors quite often. We have to be trained. We have to kind of be retrained in that. And studying mythology, studying people like Joseph Campbell and some of the others, and Robert Johnson and some other people like that can help you do that. Jung's book on symbols is you know, very powerful. So the subconscious works with that. It takes everything literally and personally, and it keeps a photocopy of everything. But the photocopy is not what got input. The photocopy is what got interpreted. So it doesn't remember what happened. It remembers your version of what happened. And over time now, new studies are showing with memory that we change memories as we go along. You know, it's very interesting. Now, when I was in law enforcement, I knew this was so because, you know, when you would ask witnesses what happened, and it was just amazing what they would tell you. You know, you'd have 3 people witness the same thing within a 10-foot radius, and you get 3 completely different people described as the perpetrator. The only thing in common was the gun was really big. Then we found out the gun wasn't really big, you know, but the person was 6. So, you know, there's an old joke. The cop comes out and he says, okay, I got a description. The guy is 5'6" to 6'8". He's possibly African American or Caucasian or Latino. He had hair that could be blonde, could be black. He was wearing orange shoes, blue shoes, red shoes, and yellow shoes, and he had a popcorn machine on his back. But, you know, now we know that eyewitness testimony is incredibly unreliable because we're not seeing what's going on. We're seeing what we're projecting onto the situation, and we're projecting at, and that, guess what? The reptilian buttons are all pressed, and you're in tremendous instinctual fear, and you project all of your greatest fears onto this person or people. And then your description is very likely to be inaccurate. Okay? In fact, there are cases where people have come up and robbed people, and the people knew the person that robbed them, and they still couldn't identify them. The subconscious works on the principle of least effort. It follows the path of least resistance. It's called the expediency factor. Your subconscious will look for the quickest way through. Okay, and that may be okay, and it may not be. For example, if you're ready to do some personal work, your subconscious will be the part of you saying, well, you don't have to meditate every day. You know, maybe, or not for 20 minutes, maybe 5 would be enough, you know. And if you're going to go on that diet, you know, you can add Cheetos. That would be okay. You know, I mean, you know that voice that kind of lets you off the hook whenever you decide to make a change. The voice that says, "Well, let's not go crazy here. You don't have to pay all your taxes. That would be a sucker move." So it's looking for the easiest way out. It often looking to make an excuse for something, right? It's awful hard for people to apologize properly because, a true apology, what if you apologize without an excuse? I'm sorry, you say, "I apologize. I did it because I didn't know." You don't even want to. They say, "I apologize. I'm sorry if I harmed you. I'm sorry if you were upset. I'm sorry. I regret that." And that was it. You didn't tell them why you did the thing. See, that's that subconscious desire to mitigate the effect. Okay. If you want to see that in action, become a police officer and make traffic stops. Why were you doing what? Do you know what you? They usually start. Do you know what you did? And then we play a little game. Why, no, officer. I have no idea what I did. Well, you went 78 and a 33, and you ran 12 stop signs. Are you sure, officer? I don't think I did that. The subconscious mind is going crazy trying to get out of it. So or you just look. You ever look in the rearview mirror and see the lights behind you? That'll activate that reptilian brain, even if you didn't do anything wrong, right? Your subconscious mind has a need to be moral. Now, moral not in any general sense of what everyone accepts, but moral in terms of your own construct of what's right and wrong. It will tend to automatically want to take you in that direction. And quite often that's good, because to be moral is usually good, but morals and ethics aren't always the same thing. If you're a mafia hit person, your moral obligation may be to kill the guy that Don told you to kill. That would be moral from that standpoint. So it has a need to be moral, but it will also tend to, again, adjust the morality to be expedient in many cases. And then finally, it knows only the present time. There is no future or past in the subconscious mind. So when you say, "I will be a better person," it's kind of like saying, "Don't twist it." Because your subconscious goes, "Okay, fine, let me know when." It doesn't have any sense of a future or a past. Everything in the subconscious mind is seen from a now context. So when you affirm, it's not "I will be," it's "I am." You see. And when you're looking at maybe readjusting some memories, you can do that. You're not readjusting what happened, you're readjusting your interpretation of it now. So it's an "I am" statement. And another little nuance that isn't one of these rules is you don't need to affirm ability. It's not "I can," it's "I am." Because for the most part, we don't have to affirm the ability. You already can. If you say, "Well, I want to lose 30 pounds, so I can lose 30 pounds." Well, that's true. You can. You're just not. So your subconscious can't act on can. You don't have to affirm the ability. You affirm that it's done, and you see it as though it's done. And then you put that intention behind it and that emotion behind it, and that's how it gets resolved. Ernest Holmes said, "We are continuously being drawn into situations or circumstances, sometimes against our objective will," which would be conscious, "but seldom against our unconscious willing. Most of our mental imagery is unconscious. It comes either from previous experiences or the experiences of the race. There is much in the subconscious of which the intellect is not aware, but one thing is certain: our subjective or unconscious thought patterns can be changed. We have created them, and we can change them." And by thought patterns there, he's referring to beliefs at the subconscious level. You have thoughts at the conscious level, you have beliefs at the subconscious level. And as long as those beliefs are active, they are the law of your life. So if they're limiting beliefs, the law of your life will keep you limited. If they're self-destructive beliefs, the law of your life will keep you automatically going towards self-destructive behavior. What we have to learn to do is to turn ourselves in the direction we want to go and see very clearly that that's what we want to do, and see it as though it's done. We have to become end result oriented in our internal work and our goal setting. When I teach public speaking, and I know Paulette teaches public speaking too, one of the things I really talk about is you don't see yourself giving the talk. You see yourself getting a standing ovation. See, that's the end, and that pulls you through the preparation. And when I see myself giving the talk, I'm in the process. I don't want to visualize process so much as I want to visualize the end result. When your kids are studying, don't tell them to visualize taking the test. Visualize getting the grade back or getting a diploma. That would be good. Right? Yeah, why are you studying? You're studying for the end result. I'm not studying for the test. I'm studying for life. If I study for the test, I may pass the test, but I'll forget that stuff a couple days later. But if I'm studying to learn the material so I can move forward in life to get my diploma to go into the world in a certain way, that puts a whole different structure and a set of instructions into my subconscious mind as to how I do it. Remember, it's just very literal. It takes you literally. If you say, God, I wish this was over. You ever said that? You're saying that about this talk. God, I wish this was over. Well, wishful thinking doesn't work on the subconscious level. There's no power in a wish. You know? You say, God, let this be over. And it's over. Thank you very much.